Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Born of the Gods here from Valencia, Spain. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Randy Buehler and Zach Hill, and we are underway. This is our second quarterfinal match of the Top 8 Sunday. Chris Fennell, you get a look at him there. The other guy, Jacob Wilson, two American players with solid levels of success coming in, both of them Grand Prix champions, Randy.
Yeah, no, we talked about how there's not a lot of previous Pro Tour Top 8 experience here, but these guys are both Gold Pros.
Right.
They're both Grand Prix champions, and they've got like 7 Grand Prix Top 8s between them.
Right.
These are guys who've been around and played a lot of Magic at the highest level of the game.
No slouches, and we're underway. So, left-hand side of your screen, Jacob Wilson. Young guy, he's only 18 years old. He is playing...
Is he American? I thought he was Canadian.
He actually lives in Canada now, you're correct. So he's from California, but he lives there. So Canadian, even though you see the American
Ignore
flag
the U.S. flag.
Yeah, he's sort of in between, you know. So but he is Canadian, and we're going to call him a Canadian here. But let's take a look at what we have here. We have a matchup of Melirapod for Jacob Wilson, and Chris Fennell is playing Storm. Now, he looks like he's kicked things off here and made our life real easy with a Gitaxian Probe, and it's going to reveal Jacob Wilson's hand, which is Revelar, Kitchen Finks, a second Noble Hierarch, and a couple of lands. Jacob led things off with his own Noble Hierarch. Randy, how does this thing play out?
Well, this is not a good matchup for the pod deck.
Okay.
I mean, the pod deck has a really good grindy game. It can sort of 2-for-1, and win this like mid-game. If you have any creatures, you can't slog through. And the Storm deck is just, I'm going to ignore what you're doing, and I'm going to win if I'm lucky on turn 3, but if I'm unlucky, I'll win on turn 4 and 5.
Okay.
The pod deck just isn't fast enough to kill that quickly.
It just doesn't generate pressure.
Yeah, game 1 is particularly hard for the pod matchup. There are some sideboard cards that can make the match a lot more winnable in games 2 and 3. But we talk about it's only best 2 out of 3. So Jacob Wilson in a 3 out of 5, I would like the pod deck a lot more than in a 2 out of 3.
Okay, now Zach, if you're sitting in Chris Fennell's seat, what's your game plan here?
I mean, my game plan, the thing is, you're not under a lot of disruption, nor are you under a lot of pressure. So the way that you lose, I think, is to actually try to go off before you have to.
Yeah.
You know, if you commit a bunch of rituals to the board, draw like 3 or 4 cards off a Pyromancer Ascension cantrip, just don't see anything and die. I think basically you're just going to want to wait, you know, disrupt your opponent's mana, play enough lands that you don't have to rely upon your rituals, draw into a Pyromancer Ascension, and just kind of be casual about it.
Okay.
Lean on your Electromancers and play the mid-long game.
I'm going to slow you down a little bit here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of redundancy in this Storm list, right? A lot of similar type of spells. You mentioned rituals and cantrips. Why don't you talk to us about those to let us know what we're going to be seeing when Chris Fennell does decide to pull the trigger and try to go off here?
Yeah, so rituals and cantrips, two kind of old school pieces of Magic slang. Ritual based off Dark Ritual, which is a card that lets you, for a black mana, get 3 black mana. Desperate Ritual, Paretic Ritual are 2 cards that let you spend 2 mana to get 3 red mana.
So you net mana, but you lose a card.
You net mana, but you lose a card. Now, this deck, between Pyromancer Ascension and Goblin Electromancer, which reduces the cost of your spells, can actually generate quite a bit of mana out of these cards.
Okay.
Then you use cards like Sleight of Hand and Serum Visions and Gitaxian Probe in order to basically trade a card for a card, but churn through your deck to find the cards that matter. And again, once you start copying those, you go from replacing yourselves to actually being ahead on cards in your hand.
Now, after the culmination of all this cantripping and ritualing, what's the end game here for Chris?
Basically, what you want to do is cast the card Past in Flames that lets you cast all the spells from your graveyard, and then you use Grapeshot, which deals a damage to your opponent for each spell you've cast this turn, to just kill your opponent in one fell swoop.
Okay. Now, what does it look like on the other side of the table, Randy, if you're sitting in Jacob Wilson's seat? We've seen that, you know, a pretty pedestrian start for his deck here. He has a Kitchen Finks on turn 2. Nothing wrong with that.
That was turn 3. The first Pyroc got bolted.
Okay.
But yeah, he can attack for 4 with, I mean, this can win against some players. But yeah, he kept the draw. You have to keep that draw. You've got some acceleration. You've got some land. You've got a Kitchen Finks. I mean, part of the thing with the pod deck is that the games play completely differently depending on whether or not you have the card Birthing Pod.
Okay.
If you have a Birthing Pod, you have access to everything in your library. It's full of situational one-of cards, and there's a combo kill that you can stitch together to just win the game on the spot.
Okay.
So if you have Birthing Pod, the deck is, I think, the most powerful deck in the format.
All right.
Still not a great matchup against Storm, but it's one of the most powerful cards in the format. Now, when you don't have the card Birthing Pod, now you're kind of taking these sort of situational, sort of grindy 2-for-1s and trying to attack with them. It'll get the job done eventually, but in this matchup, eventually is not usually fast enough.
Okay, so right now, Jacob Wilson does have some amount of pressure on Chris Fennell.
Yeah, no,
he's got a Revel Arc, and he has the Kitchen Finks still, and that's 7 damage.
Yeah, I mean, Finnell is dead in 2 attacks.
Yeah.
But, that's still a turn 6 kill or something.
So Chris Fennell does have a Pyromancer Ascension. One of the key cards for him, as it really puts him over the top on the turn he decides to go off. Randy, talk to us a little bit about Pyromancer Ascension.
Right, so Pyromancer's Ascension, if you play a card which shares a name with something in your graveyard, it gets a counter. Once you get 2 counters onto it, then every future spell you play, you get a free copy of it.
Right.
And that's what really chains out the spells. Suddenly, Manamorphose, instead of merely cycling, right, it costs 2 mana, makes 2 mana, draws a card. Now suddenly, you get 2 copies of it. So it makes 4 mana and draws 2 cards. Throw in a Goblin Electromancer, now it's 1 mana for 2 cards. So Ascension is sort of the most unfair thing going on in this deck list. If he can get a couple counters on the Pyromancer's Ascension, that's what makes it sort of easy to go off.
Okay.
Sometimes you can sort of stitch together a win without it, but those are really hard. And it's really the Ascension that you want to go off with.
All right. Now, Chris Fennell does have Ascension. It is not currently active, though. He has
you
no
saw him
counters
cycle a
on it.
Manamorphose earlier, and I think that was just because he wanted to get a copy of it into the graveyard, such that the 2 in his hand were enough to single-handedly turn on Ascension.
Right, and that is exceptionally powerful because those Manamorphose turning on Ascension are going to give him an active Ascension, 4 mana if he wants it, 2 new cards with a ritual that he can copy and a Grapeshot in his hand. I think the question is, does he want to try for it this turn or next turn? Looks like he's going for it this turn.
All right, so there's 1 counter on his Pyromancer Ascension thanks to the second Manamorphose there. You see the other one hiding down in the yard, and it's going to draw him a card here.
The other thing that going for it here does is it allows him to use Grapeshot. If he can't actually go off enough to kill Jacob Wilson, he can kind of wipe out a bunch of his creatures.
Okay.
That's true. The one thing that I am sketchy a little bit on that play is if he kills Revelark and Noble Hierarch, kind of the 2 obvious targets for a medium-sized Grapeshot for 4, Wilson gets both those Hierarchs back, which allows him to attack with Finks for 5 damage.
No, it's true.
So, we were talking about the thing that could go wrong is
you might have
trying to
waited a
win
turn?
a little bit too soon. And I mean, a lot of it depends on what he draws off this Manamorphose, but he doesn't have any more card drawing, so his active Pyromancer Ascension just not accomplishing a lot right here.
He's being attacked for 7, right?
He's being attacked for 7.
So if he goes down to 2, he can lose to Murderous Redcap.
Oh, that's an excellent point.
I think that's why he felt like he needed to go for it. He's not dead to the creatures that are on board, but there's a card in Wilson's deck that he would be dead to.
And right, with 3 Birthing Pods, I think in 4 Birthing Pods, 3 Court of Callings,
right,
and 2
There's
Murderous
a lot of
Redcaps.
ways to go get those Redcaps.
It's a really good point.
Now, what he can do if he does decide to Grapeshot, though, is he can take out the Noble Hierarch and half of the Kitchen Finks there and put himself so that he would still be at 3 and not die to Murderous Redcap potentially.
And if he gets Revelark and Noble Hierarch, or Revelark and a point to the face, he only takes 5 from Finks.
All right. Well, Ascension is active now.
Right.
Manamorphose has 2 mana in his pool.
I see that there's a second Ascension in Chris Fennell's hand there. Getting 2 of them active, it gets absolutely insane. I mean, 1 of them is enough. 2 of them is brutal, but
he doesn't really have a way to turn the second one on.
Yeah, it's not really the order of the day here, right? You mentioned it, Zach. The key here is that he needs to be able to look at cards on top of even just a sleight of hand gets him, 4 cards deep, and he gets to just keep going and going and going.
All right, so here's the defensive Grapeshot.
All right, so defensive Grapeshot. Now, Grapeshot does 1 damage to a creature or player. He's going to get, 3 or 4 Storm off of it here.
Manamorphose. He played out the second Ascension for Storm count.
I target this one first.
And because the Grapeshots resolve 1 at a time, he actually doesn't get the second Noble Hierarch back. If he killed both of them simultaneously, they'd both come back. But
they're each individual copies of a spell that resolve in order. All right, so that's going to leave Jacob Wilson with a Kitchen Finks and a Noble Hierarch. So awkwardly a 3-turn clock.
Yeah, I mean, that extra point of life for Finnell is just huge here.
It's a turn.
Now, what we see is that Wilson actually drew Gavany Township and is going to be able to accelerate this clock a little bit.
Yeah, Gavany Township is shockingly good in this Malira Pod deck.
Certainly
you win
is.
so many games by just taking all these random mana creatures and, the Kitchen Finks of the world and putting +1/+1 counters on them.
Yeah,
it actually speeds up the clock by an entire turn here.
It does.
Yeah, and the other thing it does is if your Kitchen Finks dies or if your Redcap dies, you can then just reset the persist counter because the +1/+1 counter gets rid of the -1/-1 counter.
That's right.
You can start looping with it. It's not, you can't do it all in one turn.
Yeah, it does a lot of work in this deck.
But yeah.
Jacob Wilson is still thinking about what it is that he wants to do for this turn.
Yeah, he's played the game well.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't had a ton of decision points, but what he's had, he's navigated about as well as you can.
And that is one of the things about the pod deck is that even when it doesn't get its incredible combo draws, you know, you're putting your opponent under enough pressure that it makes them do something.
Yeah, and here he did, right? He put him enough pressure. Finnell kind of had to go for it before he was really super ready, and he kind of fizzled. Like, look at Finnell's hand. He's got nothing, and he's dead in 2 turns.
All right, there we go. So he's going to play his land, also play out a Birds of Paradise, so it's going to get a counter on it, and that's going to put counters on everything here.
So 4 and 1 from Exalted. He deals 5. He's saying, I'm going to kill you next turn. Can you kill me?
And he can't. He draws a land off the top, and it looks like Jacob has stolen game 1 here from Chris Fennell. You said it's a terrible matchup for him, so he's got to be super relieved to have picked up that first game.
That is a happy man right now.
No problem. Kitchen Finks into Revelark, just doing it the old-fashioned way here.
We saw Finnell get mana flooded. One of the cards that the Star City list plays that Finnell doesn't is Desperate Ravings.
Oh, that's a good point.
Which is an amazing card in situations like that. You know, it also basically just wins you the game with an active Ascension.
All right, so welcome back to the booth, guys. Marshall, Zach, and Randy here. Why don't we take a look at some sideboards here? I want to look at Chris Fennell's sideboard. What does he have here, Zach, that is going to do? You can start talking about it. We're going to get a graphic up for you as well so that you guys can get a visual on the sideboard too.
Sure. So he's got an extra Lightning Bolt. He main decks 2 copies. Going up to 3 means he can buy a lot of turns against those mana creatures. Also can just disrupt the opponent. We were talking about Finnell. Yeah, and then Empty the Warrens, another really relevant card, because a way a lot of decks interact with the Storm deck is through Pyromancer Ascension and Past in Flames, both of which demand the graveyard. So if they bring in graveyard hate, you can do, you basically stop 2 of the most powerful things the Storm deck does. But with Empty the Warrens, you can just say, okay, I don't care about the graveyard at all, cast a couple of rituals and a free spell, and get 8 or 10 goblins. So I think you bring an Empty in almost every matchup. The other cards I'm looking at here are Torpor Orb, which stops all enter the battlefield abilities, completely turns off the Melira Pod deck's combo kill, making it play like a fair deck. And, of course, Anger of the Gods, just tailor-made for this matchup, exiling all of those persist creatures, killing all of the mana creatures, and buying a ton of time.
It feels like Chris Fennell certainly has a strong plan against. I mean, this is a lot of stuff here.
It's a lot of cards to bring in. The challenge is what do you bring out?
Right.
And I don't really know the answer to that. I mean, I can see, you know, a line of play where you say, okay, they're going to be hating on my graveyard. I'm not going to worry about all these Past in Flames. You can say, okay, you know, I can trim Cantor. I don't need Faithless Looting and Gitaxian Probe and Serum Visions and
you sure?
Well,
what happened in that game? He didn't draw any cards.
Right, exactly. And you need to bring in the rituals if you're going to keep an Empty the Warrens. So
I want you to talk about that, Zach, because there is a weird pressure that Chris Fennell has here in that since he is a combo deck, he has to have critical mass of the pieces needed to make the combo work. It's not like he can just willy-nilly start taking all these pieces out. If he takes out too much, then he isn't a real combo deck, and even though he can prevent Jacob Wilson from killing him for a while, he won't be able to actually kill him himself.
Right, and that may be one of the reasons why, even though Torpor Orb and Anger and Empty and Bold are all good in this matchup, you just say, okay, I've got to keep my deck together first. I mean, I think a lot of it just depends upon the specific matchup and what kind of hate you expect your opponent to be bringing in.
Sure.
If you know you're going to have to win through Leyline of the Void and Scavenging Ooze, then I think you might even just say, okay, I'm not even going to worry about my graveyard. I'm going to just cut Past in Flames entirely or cut Ascension entirely, and to just say, I'm going to focus on Empty the Warrens and use burn spells to deal with your creatures.
Okay.
In this particular matchup, I think a lot of the hate is just coming in the form of Thoughtseize and attacking the hand, not so much attacking the graveyard. So I don't even know if I would worry about the Empty the Warrens plan.
All right, well, now a lot of what you're saying, Zach, is contingent on having an idea of what your opponent's up to in their sideboard. Randy, what is his opponent up to in his sideboard? Jacob Wilson, does he have a lot of stuff against Storm?
Yes. He knows this is a bad matchup first game. So he's loaded for bear in the sideboard. 4 Thoughtseize is good. Scavenging Ooze will also come in order to attack the graveyard to work on Ascensions and Past in Flames. Sin Collector is good. Entomber Exarch is good. So essentially, there's 6 discard spells: Sin Collector, Entomber Exarch, and the 4 Thoughtseizes, 2 of which can be accessed with Melirapod and Court of Calling. So he ends up with a ton of discard effects in his deck. And so his plan is, if I can hit you with 1 or 2 discard effects, that should be good enough that, my junky sort of turn 5 or 6 kill
exactly
will be
what
fast
we saw
enough.
here, right?
Yeah, we saw in the first game it was fast enough just because Finnell hiccuped.
Right.
If Finnell had been able to turn on his Ascension with Rituals, and then Manamorphose had been getting forked by the Ascension, he would have drawn the cards he needed to go off. But because he needed the Manamorphoses, he didn't have any card drawing left. Anyway, you need that. You can't rely on that happening. What you can do is disrupt him enough so that he just doesn't have anything in his hand for that crucial turn. You push the game to turn 5 or 6, and you go off.
Yeah.
Now,
Thoughtseize being the forced hiccup here, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Just make you hiccup.
You create your own hiccup.
Right.
Now, I've seen a lot of Melirapod lists, or I've seen some anyway, that are better in this matchup. It's funny. If you look at Team Pantheon, where Kai Bude was playing Storm, John Finkel has been playing Storm for years, their Melirapod decks were much better against Storm. Not that they were trying to beat their teammates, but they just thought Storm would be a big part of the field because it was so good and they knew it was good. So what Andrew Cuneo would run in this deck is he would run Aethersworn Canonist. And so he would have what he did, and he finished top 25 at this tournament.
Yes.
And his plan was, I can Court of Calling for Aethersworn Canonist while you're in the middle of trying to go off. Aethersworn Canonist says you can only play 1 spell per turn.
Yes.
And that would destroy the matchup. Now, Wilson does not have access to any super trumps like that. So I feel like he's got a lot of cards, and he's got a plan for how to attack this matchup. But he's not... he could be better after sideboarding. If he had thought Storm was going to be a major part of the field, if he'd known he was going to be playing against Storm in the top 8, you would see Aethersworn Canonist here, or some people also would run a Thalia.
Okay.
Because Storm is here, if you're thinking about playing Pod in the future, like in the PTQ season, take a look at Aethersworn Canonist or Thalia. If you want to have the card that you can just Court of Calling out at instant speed to own the matchup, that's the direction you could go. But Thoughtseize also a totally fine plan, and that's the one Jacob's on.
Okay.
Hearing Randy talk through that and thinking about how hard my hand is going to be attacked, I mean, it's a lot of disruption. I don't like Faithless Looting as much because it puts you down cards.
Oh, sure.
And you're not going to assemble as much of a critical mass, and I don't know that you need 3 Grapeshots because, again, you're not going to be able to get enough Storm to be able to just kind of deal 20 the full way. I think what you do is you lean on your Angers of the Gods, your extra bolts. You
clear their board with anger and then empty.
Exactly, right. And you empty for just like 8 goblins or something. You don't worry about Faithless Looting. You go down to like 1 or 2 Grapeshots, something like that. And, you trim here and there. I don't even know how many Electromancers you need since your plan is involving casting a bunch of rituals anyway.
Oh,
and
right.
Getting like
well, if you're going to
mana.
If you're leaning on Anger the Gods, that makes the Electromancer worse.
Right. Electromancer gets way worse. So I think you kind of have to just kind of mute your expectations a little bit. You're not going to assume that your opponent's not going to draw any way to disrupt your hand. And you're just going to play for a little bit longer of a game and a little bit more less intense of a Storm plan.
Now, Randy, you mentioned that if this was going to be the traditional, 5-match type situation, that you'd probably lean towards the Pod deck because of his sideboard. He stole game 1.
I know, yeah. Jacob Wilson is feeling very happy right now.
So he's in a pretty good position here to try to take one of the next 2 games and advance to the semis.
Yeah, no, the Pod players believe this is a winnable matchup because while they're a huge dog in game 1, they believe they're favored after sideboarding.
I see.
The 4 Thoughtseize, Sin Collector, Entomber Exarch, and Scavenge. Like, they think they're favored after sideboarding. And I know that Jacob played against this exact Storm list in the Swiss. He did lose the match, but he also had a mulligan to 4 in the 3rd game.
Goodness.
And he felt like he was about to win it. If he'd had any reasonable game 3 draw, he felt like he could have won that matchup.
Right. So this is going to be an interesting one. Chris Fennell up against the wall early here. What does it look like, Zach, from Chris's side? Like, how does he actually, like, when he has his opening hand, which, by the way, the players are looking at right now, they're doing some shuffling, some presenting, and I think maybe even some mulliganing. What is he looking for here?
I mean, I think the card you want the most is Anger of the Gods. That's going to give you the time to assemble everything else. And again, a lot of it isn't really dependent upon your side of the board. I think you're looking mostly to not get Thoughtseized.
Okay.
I think you need Pyromancer Ascension because you've got to cast your cantrips in order to dig to spells. And, you actually want to hold your cantrips if you don't have a Pyromancer Ascension, because you're going to need to cast go off in a pretty big turn. But what you really want to do is cast them early so that they're in your graveyard, so you can Ascension and fill that up. Once you have an active Ascension, really you just need a spell. I mean, what happened in...
A spell that says draw a card.
A spell that says draw a card, right. It doesn't just add mana. What happened in the first game is pretty rare, but that is a thing that happens. Sometimes your deck beats itself. So I think really you're looking for just a nice balanced hand of cantrips, lands, and rituals. The main thing that you're looking for has nothing to do with you. You want your opponent not to attack your hand very much. It's very difficult to win through multiple hand disruption spells.
So you're going to be looking much more closely at what your opponent's doing than what you are necessarily. Looks like players are close to ready. They've got their 7-card openers.
Is that a 5-card hand in front of Jacob
Well, I
Wilson?
see 2 to the left there. So.
Oh, maybe that is 7.
Yeah, he
Okay,
might be doing a weird, slow roll thing where he looks at the last 2 just to make sure that he gets what he wants. But we're going to be back down there for a moment. We're going to be bringing you today all of the matches from our top 8 in the feature match area. We've already done 1 quarterfinal match. We're bringing you the second one now. All 3 of us are going to be here for the next 2 after that. Then on the semifinals and the finals, we're going to swap roles with the news desk, and we're going to be here all day with you. So sit down. All right, looks like play is underway. Why don't we head back down to the feature match area right now for this second game of Chris Fennell versus Jacob Wilson. All right, we are underway. Game 2 here. Jacob Wilson versus Chris Fennell. And Chris has kicked things off. He is on the play for this game with a Gitaxian Probe revealing land. Ooh, there's a birthing pod. That's a
great draw.
Yeah, birthing pod. He has turn 2 pod here potentially. He also
has Thoughtseize.
Double Noble Hierarch and a Thoughtseize. So, wow.
Yeah, Gitaxian Probe. I bet Finnell wishes he could take a card out of that hand. Instead, all he gets to do is see it.
Yeah, this is more of a bad news Gitaxian Probe than anything. So you were saying, Zach, that what you really hoped in your opening hand from Chris Fennell was that his opponent didn't have a Thoughtseize or some disruption spell. Bad news.
Yeah, extremely bad news. Not only does he have disruption, he has multiple hierarchs and a birthing pod, able to really get some pressure to back up that Thoughtseize.
Yep.
And what Fennell doesn't have, I mean, the thing that you really want, and I didn't really say this because it's kind of like the dream. I mean, you want to be able to just go like ritual, empty the warrens as soon as humanly possible.
Ah, I see.
But, that's asking a lot. You've got the rituals out of this hand. You have Faithless Looting, which it looks like he did keep in. I think you kind of have to Faithless. No, I don't even know if you Faithless now. Like, you don't want empty in your hand until he casts Thoughtseize. So I think you kind of just, chill out, hope to draw the Thoughtseize. If I were Wilson, I think I'd probably Noble Hierarch turn 1.
Yeah,
I don't
agree.
know. And if your opponent just has a best.
Finnell is not capable of winning on turn 2.
Right.
So you do not need to turn 1 Thoughtseize. Turn 2 will be the more interesting play where he has to decide between the pod and the Thoughtseize.
Exactly.
And there it is. He's going to drop down to 18, but get that Noble Hierarch into play.
So, the last thing, I mean, this gives him a 1-turn window to draw empty, so you might just Gitaxian Probe and say, I just want to draw empty right here because you're going to get hit with Thoughtseize. Yeah, I mean, we see him Gitaxian Probing, but, I mean, you basically need empty right here.
Right, so Kitchen Finks is the new card there. You see Jacob help him out just by pointing to it. Jacob lives in Canada. Chris Fennell from the United States.
Yeah, this is 2 of the teams we've been tracking all weekend, right? This is face-to-face versus TCG player.
Right. I think that's another Gitaxian Probe off the top for Chris Fennell. He has the info.
So now he's been paying life for those. He was thinking about paying a blue mana. The issue with that is, again, if he draws empty, assuming he's even boarded in it. I mean, I'm making that up that he even boarded it in.
Right, we don't know
really good
that
right
sure.
here.
That's true.
Thinking about a sack land to thin a land out of the deck. But if he pays life, he can, again, draw empty live and still go off this turn.
All right, so he's going to go get a basic island. And he has a steam vent. He's got Faithless Looting. He's got the second Gitaxian Probe. He can certainly keep things moving forward for himself here.
Blue-red.
And he's going to start with the Manamorphose here, Zach.
Yeah, I like starting with Manamorphose because it means you don't have to pay more life to Gitaxian Probe.
Okay. He finds a Pyromancer Ascension off of it, uses the 2 mana that he made to cast it.
And the Pyromancer Ascension pretty awesome here because now this Gitaxian Probe is going to turn on, or get a counter on
the first counter,
the Ascension. Casting Probe here also means it's not going to get Thoughtseized, so he knows he can get 1 counter on Ascension. The downside is he's really largely out of cantrips. He's got Faithful Saluting if he is able to turn on an Ascension, but copying Faithful Saluting doesn't actually get you ahead on cards.
Draws a Ritual there. And I think that's going to be it for Chris Fennell for this turn.
So, Ascension a really good draw for him off Manamorphose.
Yeah.
At least really good in the sense that it does. It
Ooh,
moves the
speaking
game
of really
forward.
good draws.
Wow.
Yeah, Jacob Wilson just drew Abrupt Decay off the top of his deck, so that Pyromancer Ascension potentially not long for this world. The Thoughtseize that Jacob Wilson has in his hand, does it get worse as the game goes on?
I mean, I certainly think it does. I mean, a lot of matchups, you want to wait as long as possible to Thoughtseize. The thing about this matchup is as long as possible
It's
is
turn
like
two.
turn 2.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He can go land Abrupt Decay Thoughtseize, though, right?
Yes, he can, because he can make green mana with a Noble Hierarch and black mana with his Overgrown Tomb. He just needs another black mana source for the Thoughtseize if that's what he wants.
Now, we've been talking a lot about the Empty the Warrens
There's
plan.
Thoughtseize
Turns
here.
out that Chris did not actually do that. He basically
Okay.
trimmed. He brought in 2 Anger of the Gods and a Bolt.
Okay.
And took out a single copy of Grapeshot, a single Goblin Electromancer, and a single Faithful Saluting. So
Now,
looking
Randy-
not to transform.
Okay, Randy, is he going to take one of the rituals here? What's the plan? He knows that he can take out the Pyromancer Ascension, so it's not going to get active anyway. It's ritual, Faithless Looting.
Wow, it's...
Faithless Looting in the
Faithless
yard.
Looting is a little bit tempting just because the rest of the hand does nothing.
Right.
Like, that hand needs help, and Faithless Looting is the only card that can sort of dig for things.
He can basically make him use up his whole turn flashing it back if that's what he wants to do.
And it's because he has the Abrupt Decay and the ability to blow up the Ascension. That
Now-
those rituals, they're just less scary without an Ascension in play.
Now, how... Jacob Wilson, unfortunately, isn't going to get to make kind of a cool play here, right? Like, is there any merit normally to being able to just leave Abrupt Decay up, try to get your opponent to use some spells to get his Ascension active and then blow it up, or does that not
really.
end up
The problem
working?
is that so many of the Storm cards are instants that they can go off in response.
I see. They just stack up a bunch of stuff on the stack.
Now, I mean, maybe you do wait for that. You can respond to the trigger on the Ascension.
Yes.
So he looks like he is passing with Abrupt Decay mana up. So
Yeah.
if Finnell makes a play to put one counter on and then he responds to that, Finnell can keep going off in theory, but he won't have 2 counters on the Ascension until after he plays an additional spell.
That's right.
Yeah, I like this line from Wilson.
I like the line from Wilson, but I do think I would have taken Faithful Saluting. Yeah, okay, and
I
this
think
is what we see.
right.
Because right
Yeah,
now,
that counter is not on there yet. He's responding to the trigger.
That's right. It has 1 counter on it. Now, Chris Fennell has to be at least somewhat aware that this is coming, as Noble Hierarch didn't attack.
I also think he took the ritual, but I think he took the Desperate Ritual, by the way, to bait Finnell into making this play. It puts a copy of Desperate Ritual in the graveyard where that second ritual looks so tempting as a way to turn on the
That's
Ascension.
interesting.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and with looting in his hand, he's got a line of play which is basically cast all the rituals, loot and copy it,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and then flash it back. He's not going to get ahead on cards, but it digs him to Past
Yes.
in Flames.
Yeah.
And then he can just do everything from his graveyard.
Finnell is doing exactly what Jacob Wilson wanted him to do.
Right.
And he Thoughtseized to try to tempt Finnell into doing exactly this.
A really excellent play from Wilson.
Completely agree.
Chris Fennell did draw another Desperate Ritual, but...
Well, the first one hasn't resolved yet, so he doesn't even
has
have
no
the mana to cast it.
Yep, no mana.
Yeah, and it's actually, playing the Abrupt Decay in response to the second trigger with the Desperate Ritual on the stack actually very relevant here.
Oh, yeah. No, this is awesome from Jacob Wilson. This is good magic.
Now, what are we thinking about here, though? I mean, there's no response, right? We see Chris Fennell's hand. Faithless Looting's a sorcery. Is there any...
There's the spell, then the trigger's on top of it, then there's the game.
I think he's trying to just ascertain
okay.
what reality is.
Yeah, he
we
wants
are
to be
making
able.
sure.
He knows that the Storm deck can often go off in response to things like this, but his hand does not let him do it.
Right, and I think that they're just making perfectly clear exactly when Abrupt Decay happened, what's happening with it. Because, Chris Fennell kind of put that counter up right away, and
Right.
they're making sure everything's right.
And Chris Fennell has not been playing Storm a lot. Like, they tested for this
Actually,
format.
not a lot at all, right?
No, he picked the deck up this week.
Yeah.
Like, his team and the playtesting results, team TCG player, TCG player, they had tested this matchup. They tested everything and concluded that Storm had really good results. So Finnell was like, all right, the playtesting has revealed Storm's the deck. I need to go learn it. And so you see him playing a little slower, a little more deliberately because, this is not muscle memory for him. A lot of this, the situations he's running into, as he plays. I mean, it's real testament to how well he's played this weekend that he's gotten to the top 8 with a deck that he doesn't have a ton of reps on.
And this is not an easy deck to pilot. You do need to put in a lot of reps and get that muscle memory going, like you said, Randy. I mean, once you get it, it's a lot of redundancy and you can kind of piece it together, but it's not abundantly straightforward how to play this deck at all.
It's not, and an example of that is he actually played the mountain before going down any of this. If he was able to discard a mountain there, he would have enough rituals to actually try and pursue the Past in Flames play we were talking about. It's not great, but I think a ritual would be way better than a mountain for him right now. And, it looks like he's going to play the waiting game, but I mean, you're almost in a situation where you really needed to kind of just like hope you hit a Past in Flames in 4 cards and then just fuel through enough rituals to do something.
So you would have cast the Desperate Ritual before doing your land drop for the turn.
I think so, yeah, and just have the option of being able to discard that mountain because, I mean, things aren't great either way for Finnell, but I mean, he just does not have a lot going on right now.
All right, now Jacob Wilson, it's back on his turn here, and he's got a lot of options.
Yeah, he does. He has to decide whether to play Birthing Pod now. He could pod, pay 2 life, use it, pay 2 life. Or he could run out Hierarch Kitchen Finks.
Pay 2 life.
He's going to pay 2 life for Birthing Pod.
It is really hard to decline the ability to activate Birthing Pod.
It really is.
Pay 2 more life.
All right.
Pay
Now
2
what does he
life.
get
Now he's going to
here?
go get a 2-drop here.
Could be Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, I love getting Scavenging Ooze here, especially if you have,
A Wall of Roots. Yeah, he wants more mana. Oh, and the Wall of Roots lets him cast
Noble Hierarch.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good line.
And this allows him to put together Malira. He's got Finks, so what he needs is a Sacrifice Outlet and Malira.
Yep.
If he wants to combo. Getting Viscerous here is kind of challenging from this position, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
usually you
is.
have to get the...
You can go
You get
Noble
Voice of-
Hierarch into Voice of
you
Resurgence.
get Voice of Resurgence,
Yeah,
exactly.
and then you can sack the token to get it.
Right. I think he also plays a Ranger of EOS, so you can Ranger of EOS for the Vizaras here,
All right.
if you have a 3 to sack.
Although if Kitchen Finks already has a 1/1 counter on it, you need another Kitchen Finks to do the combo, right?
Yes.
He has one. But
All right, so Manamorphose here for Chris Fennell. Trying to get something going. Sitting at 13 life. He's down a game to Jacob Wilson, who has a pretty sweet board state going. And Chris Fennell is flashing back Faithless Looting. He finds Sleight of Hand and a Ritual. He's got a Misty Rainforest and another Ritual in his hand. Or there's a Lightning Bolt.
I mean, it's, again, not bringing in Empty here is really worth noting because, like, all of these situations we've seen, Empty would have been unbelievable. I mean, it would have replaced another card. So it's, like, not a side-by-side comparison.
Sure.
But
It's funny. I was actually surprised. We didn't. Jacob Wilson sideboarded. Basically, guys, he brought in all the cards we talked about. He also brought in a Harmonic Sliver and a Voice of Resurgence. The thing that surprised me most, getting the report on the sideboard, is he took out his Orzhov Pontiff. And Orzhov Pontiff is capable of giving all the creatures on the other side of the board -1/-1, so it can wipe out an entire Goblin Warrens. I was a little bit surprised that Wilson took them out, but now if Finnell didn't bring in the Goblin Warrens, Orzhov Pontiff is only good versus Goblin Warrens.
Right.
But it completely blanks Goblin Warrens, so it could easily be that Finnell didn't want to go Goblin Warrens out of fear of Orzhov Pontiff, and Jacob Wilson was just a step ahead of him.
And and that makes a ton of sense. I mean, we saw corner case scenarios involving Pontiff giving creatures +1/+1 in response to things like
Grapeshot. Yeah, some pretty nasty stuff there, actually. But Empty of the Warrens not getting there. We take a look at Empty there. Makes a whole bunch of 1/1s.
I mean, it might just be that there's no way to win, and not like literally win, but that like, okay, like Empty is sort of good, but there's an easy trump to it.
Yeah,
but
Pontiff
not
just
doing
does
Empty is
trump it.
hard too. You know,
If it's in the deck.
it just seems like a really hard matchup after board.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so Chris Fennell has to settle for Lightning Bolting the Noble Hierarch here and passing the turn back after his Faithless Looting.
Can't take a look at
But yeah, I mean, when you're sitting there as Storm, your opponent just has an active Birthing Pod, tons of mana, and plenty of creatures. You are not excited to
I
be
mean,
in that
this
game.
looks terrible for Chris Fennell
does.
from this point, right?
Yeah,
I
even
mean,
without this-
I want to get that out there that
Yes.
this is not good for him. He's got, what, 1 or 2 cards left in his hand now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and with Faithless Looting, it puts him down cards as opposed to Desperate Ravings, which puts you up cards, which helps you dig out of a situation where your hand's being attacked.
Right. And this
More
is Entomber
disruption.
Exarch here
Yep,
for
in from the
Jacob
sideboard.
Wilson. Yeah, he's going to take a look at what Chris Fennell has left in his hand. It is a Sleight of Hand.
And this is
And it's
effectively a
gone.
duress effect, so
Yep.
it hits the sleight of hand.
I mean, Chris could top deck Anger of the Gods now, which would buy him a lot of time.
Wow, empty-handed, though.
He is completely empty-handed and finds an island.
Wow, this is exactly the way the sideboard plan was supposed to work from the pod side.
Yeah, just
grinding. I thought he wanted to have trump creatures. I really thought he would be, without a Canonist or something to completely shut down. But this disruption plan seems to work great.
There's just so many. I mean, you can access your Scavenging Ooze. You can access your Sin Collector. You've got the Entomber Exarch right now, which has a lot of text on it. Basically says duress.
Yeah, basically says duress.
And, of course, we can't forget, these are all... I mean, Chris is at 10 life. He can just get killed by these creatures in a fairly rapid
I don't think we'll see a combo kill. He'll just keep getting value creatures and then attacking with them.
Right, and he can attack here for 4, get something bigger next turn, and finish off the game, potentially. So this could be it. Chris Fennell's on nothing. He's got an island in his hand. And Wall of Roots is going to get sacked to Birthing Pod, and he's going to go get a 3-drop here.
Is he going to get Sin Collector?
He could get that. He could get a Kitchen Finks. He could get Eternal Witness.
Man, yeah, this is just brutal.
There's the Sin Collector. Target you.
Hand disruption every turn.
Yeah.
And, it's not as though it ends, because what he can do is sack Entomber Exarch to get Revelark. And just start stacking that. If anything happens to Sin Collector, that's even more.
Yeah,
and that's going to do it. Jacob Wilson 2-0 over Chris Fennell in our second quarterfinal match. The young man from Canada advancing to the semifinals here. And you can see he's got a little smile on his face. He's still talking welcome back to his opponent, so, he's
trying to be
polite. Yeah, but you know how it is when you get to the sideline, your buddies jump on you, and now you're a lot more happy. Yeah. So an important step for Jacob Wilson on his road here. He's now in the semifinals. Welcome back to the booth, guys. Marshall Sutcliffe here with Zach Hill and Randy Bueller. That was a great match. I thought that one was really fun to watch. Unfortunately for Chris, he just kind of ran out of gas at the end, and the sideboard plan of Jacob Wilson was good enough. All right, why don't we head over to the news desk for now? I have Rich, BDM, and LSV over there to talk about our next matchup. When we come back, we'll have our third of 4 total quarterfinals here from Pro Tour Born of the Gods. Don't you go anywhere.
All right, thanks very much, guys. That seemed a little bit unkind. It was like, game 1, I'm going to just put enough pressure on you so you just fall over. And in game 2, I'm just going to go prod, 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 prod. You've got nothing, thanks for the games. Wow, that was pretty nasty.
Yeah, Chris Fennell really wanted to take game 1 there where he's, if not a huge favorite, at least a favorite.
I mean, yeah, Storm can normally beat the turn 7 attack you with a 4-3 with no disruption draw. That's why he's in the top 8.
Right.
But Storm can also just lose to itself and have games where it cannot possibly win. And
he really looked like he was holding on to that third Metamorphose.
Yeah.
He desperately wanted to be able to play that after the Pyromancers Ascension was active, but he had to use it to get the Pyromancers Ascension active.
Yeah, which is, kind of what you signed up for, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. You knew this going in.
Yep.
Yeah, but it was to an extent unlucky, because when we talk about he had to sort of go off a turn early, sometimes that's much earlier than when he did have to go a turn early, and he was still struggling.
I think you said yesterday, or the Storm deck always goes off. When it goes, it always just waits until I'm dead next turn. Anytime you beat the Pyromancer Ascension deck beats you, you're going to be like, he got me the turn just before I killed him.
I was going to win next turn, but every turn's like another land drop, another couple cards off cantrips, and just more resources. So the Storm deck just has a huge incentive just to wait and wait and wait.
So why don't we take a look at the top 8 bracket here at Pro Tour Born of the Gods. 2 of our quarterfinals are gone. So you see Ansi Alkio winning earlier, and now Jacob Wilson joins him at the bottom of the bracket there. It will be Alkio against Wilson in the semi-finals later on this afternoon. So that's going to be an interesting one, but we have another half of a bracket to fill out for you. And we're going to turn our attention to quarterfinal 3, and this is Shawn Mclaren of Canada against Tim Rivera of the United States. They're both playing blue, white, and red. Here you see Shawn Mclaren of Canada. He's 25, plenty of friends, but not a team as such for this Pro Tour, 23 lifetime pro points. And then you see his 6 Pro Tours. This is his first top 8. And we saw coming to prominence in the real world of Magic, if you will, at the MOX Championship last time around, courtesy of Magic Online.
Sure. I mean, if you look at Magic Online results, Arsenal Munch is a name that's going to be very familiar to you. Shawn plays online, all the time and does very well. Kind of like, if you were going to call it Team Canadian Wilds, they're not on the face-to-face games team, and they're sort of in another whole section of Canada. So, there's a bunch of really good players there, but not in the same group.
Sure. Well, Canada's a big place, it turns out.
It is very large.
Even I know it's big, and I know nothing about geography. So let's take a look at how he went into this top 8. So here's his 16 results. There you see him kicking off with a 3-0 draft pod, and he came back on day 2 and 3-0 draft again. Luis, that's super impressive, a 6-0 draft record.
Yeah, 6-0 draft is difficult to do. There's certainly not very many people who are even capable of it. And once you 6-0 draft, it puts you in a pretty easy spot to top 8. I mean, you still got to win a lot of matches, but you 6-0 draft gives you a really big head start.
I feel pretty good if I 5-1 2 coverage drafts.
Yeah, and if you can average a 4-2 or better in Pro Tour drafts, then you're in a good spot.
Right. You give yourself position to have a lot of control over what you've done with your deck choice and your preparation and stuff for constructing.
And just a 66% win rate on the Pro Tour and draft is something that very few people can hit.
Interestingly, that draw you see in round 12 against Shi Chen Li there, what that did for him was that when it came down to the last round, he was already in by beating Tim Rivera in round 15. So against Christian Sideboard, he could play round 16 knowing he was in the top 8, and they were playing essentially for the number 1 seed. And because McLaren won that, he gets to win the dice roll, proverbially, in every round in the top 8. Is that a big deal, BDM, do you think, today?
I mean, obviously a big deal, and an even bigger deal, I think, in a 3-game set, where you're theoretically going to have those 2 games on the play if it goes the full match, and you can. It's a little harder for the other player to steal one of those games.
Well, let's see who the other player is. It's Tim Rivera from the United States. Here he comes up onto your screens. He's 33, been playing forever. Again, not a particular team affiliation this time round.
Look down at the bottom at his Pro Tour debut there.
I thought you'd like that. Yeah. A go.
I mean, I actually played against Tim Rivera the first Grand Prix I ever played, which was GP Anaheim 2003. So
by which time he'd been playing for nearly a decade at the highest level. All right, 10 Pro Tours played for him. This is his first Pro Tour top 8. Tons of high-level experience with other card games like Ansi Alkio, a real noted card shuffler in the past and present, and who knows in the future, because this is the big start for him at the Pro Tour level. Let's see how he did BDM coming into today, and he was 5-1 in draft, and there you see his record.
And 7-3 in Modern, and needed to win that last round to get in there. He was the one single player with an X-4 record. It's not. That doesn't always. Even if you get X-4, there's usually a cluster of them, and only one of them will get in. But he was the only one who ended up there, and it was really crossed fingers there in that last round that he could win and be in, or win and be 9th.
It was, and win and in that round 16. Yes. So the matchup is blue-white-red against blue-white-red twin. We're done. They are just about to get it on in the feature match area. Quarterfinal 3 is happening right now.
Hey guys, welcome back to the booth. Marshall Sutcliffe here with Zach Hill and Randy Buehler. Guys, another Canadian versus American matchup here. I believe we have Shawn Mclaren. He's playing against Tim Rivera. Randy, what is Tim's plan here?
Tim is playing another flavor of the Splinter Twin deck, basically the white twin deck.
Okay.
A lot of Splinter Twin decks are, they used to prey upon the different metagame. You need to be able to deal with Zoo. You need to be able to deal with Wild Nicodle in this field. Zoo was the most played deck, and so Tim Rivera's answer was, I'm going to block. I'm going to play Wall of Omens. It's an 0/4 cantrip. I can blink it with my Restoration Angels, and so you get the white version of the Splinter Twin. Restoration Angel also gives you a combo with Kiki Jiki, so that's the plan.
All right, looks like we're ready to head down to the feature match area right now. So let's go down there. 3rd of 4 quarterfinal matches, Shawn Mclaren versus Tim Rivera right now.